Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to Tone Talk with Mark Uzansky and Dave Friedman. Tonight is episode 168, and then we've got Peter Margolis and Brian Ranks, who are authors and co-authors of the book Collecting Loud History, and we will get all into that and much more about Marshall amps and everything. I want to mention that I apologize for missing the show last week. Guys, I did have an emergency with my wife, and she had to go to the hospital, but everything was fine. So, but I do apologize for having to miss the show and reschedule and everything, and appreciate Brian and Peter being flexible about things. So yeah, how's everybody doing? How you guys doing?
Awesome.
Good.
Yeah.
Good to hear.
I've been in organizing and throwing things away mode today here at the shop.
Oh yeah, why is that?
What sort of
Well,
things?
because things get out of sorts over a period of time, and then there comes a day when you look at it and you're like, I got to take care of this right now.
Well,
That's what happens.
you weren't throwing any good parts away, were you?
No.
Okay.
I wouldn't throw good parts away,
All
just
right.
things that are useless.
Okay. Yeah. That's cool. We're gonna have that.
All my old Marshall parts go in a little bin.
Okay.
It's like when I do little restoration things, I'm like, I wonder if I got that resistor. Let me look. Oh yeah, I do. Great.
That's cool. Well, we're gonna have a sale one day and like list all our stuff that we're
All the extra stuff. Yeah.
Let us know.
It's nothing. I mean, mostly it's stuff that's like you just want to get rid of.
No, you had good stuff before.
Brian and I have tons and tons and tons of parts that we've amassed over the years, and there've been a couple donor pieces where we've had to use stuff for restoration, and then there wasn't enough left to save it, so we.
Hey man, the best story I have about that is, speaking of donor parts, is when I restored Eddie Van Halen's Marshall. It had been rewired at some point in time in its life, and we wanted to put the original wire back in. So we took another Plexi Marshall and took the wire out of it to go into this amp.
And they gave you this donor Marshall? Or
yes, they had it. Yeah. We then rewired that amp to work again, function with newer wire, but they wanted the original stuff. So it's like, okay, we can do that. Here's an amp. You can just take it out of here. All right. Taking individual pieces of wire out. What a mess.
we have gone to some crazy lengths in our restoration over the years. Ours is, Brian. What Brian does is not so much electronics, but everything else. And we have a guy that we deal with in England, and we have sent him to the hardware store many times for a tap and die set, because the threads that are used on the old Marshalls from back in the day are not US or metric. So you have to take a US or metric screw and rethread it to fit it into a handle or to, hold a speaker up. And we have, staple guns, not like any that are sold here, but the ones that were sold, back in the 60s that they would use at Marshall to staple vinyl in, so that the staples are correct. So yeah, we've done some nutty stuff too.
Period. Correct staples.
Yeah.
I love it. That is going far.
Yeah. And, and Brian can answer to this better than I can, but the glue that we use is not allowed to be sold in California, which is where Brian and I reside. So in order to do these restorations, we have to leave the state. And cross state lines to purchase buckets of the glue and then bring it back here, just because I guess it's not OSHA approved. And, California's got its own set of rules for everything.
Tons.
Used to right in North Hollywood on Van Owen Street, and the place went out of business. And a couple of years later, it got banned from the state of California.
Yeah. What's the glue?
It comes in 5-gallon buckets, and the same with the solvent that goes with it. It's basically a yellow glue that does not bleed through and alter any of the colored vinyls, but it's almost an identical concoction to what Marshall used through the 60s and 70s.
Oh, cool. I was just curious.
Yeah, it's cool. So why don't we?
Let's talk about this book. So what?
Great.
So if someone who's just tuning in that doesn't know anything about this book, tell the story. How did this come about, and what is the deal with it?
So the book looks like this. This is one of the 6 prototypes. It's a soft cover. The books that are being delivered to us in mid-May are hardcover books. We didn't have enough time between the time that Marshall said, "Hey, come to the booth and present your book," to the actual day of the NAMM show. I think there was, from the time they gave us the approval to the time the show started, was 6 days. And everything that we had was in PDF form. So we had to find a printer quick who could do a digital book. Our books are off of a printing press with hardcovers, and they're bound correctly and all that. They're still in process. The printing is done, but they're in binding right now. So the book came about because I met Brian in '94 after the big Northridge earthquake, and I was living in Studio City, and he was in the Valley, and we had a colossal earthquake, and I had all of my stuff in a guest house behind my house, and everything in the guest house imploded. And I had all the amps there, and all the guitars were lined up in front of the amps. So they caved in, and the necks went through the grills and into the speakers, and the heads fell off, and the transformers, came apart, and the glass tubes broke. And, it was just a giant mess. And you couldn't even open the doors or the windows because bookcases tipped over, and it was just, it was horrible. So after we got all the rubble out and sort of assessed the damage and dealt with FEMA, I didn't know where to go because I had been collecting these since I was a performer in the 80s, and I had amassed about 20 heads and 20 cabinets, and they were lined up neatly. And but I had never, other than doing electronic repair like you do, I had never done any sort of restoration because everything I bought back when I bought it was in pretty decent shape. The grills were intact, the logos were intact. So there's no need to do anything. And I stupidly sprayed a bunch of them white because the band I was in, everything had to be white. So I had half a dozen of them that were spray painted. Thankfully, I didn't paint the grills. But the only guy who I knew that would basically be able to tell me where to go was Bob Bradshaw. So I went to Bob, who at the time was working on my stuff, and I said, here's a picture. What do I do? And he said, lucky for you, because there's a guy right down the way, and all he does is repair these. I said, you're kidding? And I said, like he'll fix the grills and the broken plastic parts and yeah. He said that's what he does. That's his specialty. So he connected me with Brian. I remember I was coming home from a job, and I had about an hour on the freeway, and I thought, well, let me call this guy. And turns out an hour wasn't enough because we just got into the weeds with what was wrong. And first of all, Brian said, so what do you have? And I said, well, they're Marshalls. And he goes, no, I mean, what are they? Are they, and I didn't even know at the time what to tell him, and he's like, well, what does the grill look like? And I said, well, it's, gray. And so I knew nothing about this stuff. I would walk into a store, I'd see something that say Marshall, and I'd plug in and go, yeah, this sounds good, I'll take it. So it was a hodgepodge collection of, bottom cabinets, top cabinets, and for the most part, 50-watt heads from like early to mid 70s. And so Brian came over, and the first project that we worked on, I had bought a cabinet from Lowell George's wife when Lowell George passed, and it was a 68 red basket weave cabinet in mint condition. And of course, it was drop dead along with the case that said Little Feet on it. And so
that's awesome.
I proceeded to get a can of white vinyl spray paint and paint it white so I could use it in my band. So Brian looked at it aghast and said, we got to return this to its original glory. And so thankfully, it was the least damaged of anything in my collection. That the grill was intact, the logo was intact. There was maybe some torn vinyl or something, but anyway, he took it, and bottles of solvent and cleaner and rags and a toothbrush and hours and hours and hours and days. he got all of the white paint off, and you can never tell that it had a speck of paint. And that was the first thing we did. And I said, holy cow, this guy's good at what he does. And then we just systematically went through every single one of the cabinets and heads. If the heads, had broken tubes or snapped off, tube sockets or whatever, they went to Bob. And then, we would take the chassis out of the box, and Brian would take the box home or to his shop. And then we just, took a couple of years just to get everything cleaned up. And then all the while, Brian was active as a guitar tech on the road. So he would be gone for months at a time. And he would call me and say, hey, I'm out on tour with so-and-so. Somebody's getting rid of this. I'm going to buy this if you don't want it. What do you think? And I said, I'll take it. And so that's how the buying thing started, was he would get these unbelievable deals from band members who were getting rid of stuff to get, they either got an endorsement with somebody else and they needed to get rid of their Marshall, or, whatever. So I started amassing more pieces, and Brian would tell me if something was good. And then as we started to work together on these things, he would say, do you know what this is? And I'd say, no. And he goes, well, here, this is a 1968. Let me show you how, let me, explain how it's a 68 versus a 69 or a 67. And for the next several decades, every time there was something to buy or fix or repair, whatever, he would explain to me what it was. And so, by osmosis, you start to realize, oh, it's got metal handles. Oh, there's no, plastic corners on it. It's got no anti-skid trays. It has no caster cut, and you start to realize that there are changes in every year and things to look for, and different screws and different rivets, and how you start to identify what you have. And so after a while, we would say to each other, I would give him something to restore, and we'd come back and we would load speakers in it and go, we really got to someday write all this stuff down, because now 20 became 40, became 60, became 80. And as the years went on, and I was now starting to find stuff, Craigslist happened, which was a big, amazing thing if you're looking for old Marshalls. And the recycler was sort of gone, but replaced by Craigslist. And then there was Reverb, and then, and so things started to pop up. And now that I had a little bit of knowledge, I kind of knew what to look for. And with Brian's education, I really started to become somewhat of an, expert on this. And then I met a couple of great people who really changed everything for my collection. One of whom was Eric Johnson. And I met him. It was a complete fluke, but he had sent something to, I think, Killer Vintage, and I had bought some pieces from them, and they called me and said, hey, this client has a piece. He's not sure it's real. Can he send it to you? Can you guys tear it apart and do your thing? And, look at the staples and look at the, all the seams. And so this piece arrives. I didn't know who it was from. And Brian and I, took it all apart and realized, yes, it was a real Marshall. What he had claimed it was a 64, because that's what someone told him. It wasn't. It was a 67. Nevertheless, it was correct. And so I called Killer Vintage up and I said, come and pick it up. Here's the good news and bad news. It's a real Marshall. It's not a 64. It's a 67. And they said, well, our client really wants to call you and thank you and, give you a check. And I said, no, it's not. Honestly, it's not necessary. Brian and I love doing it. And he said, no, he feels like he needs that. Okay. So I pick up the phone and it's Eric Johnson. And, one of my heroes, an amazing player and a astute Marshall collector and user. And we started a friendship and a relationship. And many of the pieces in my collection were once his for touring or recording. And so that was, that sort of upped the ante. But back to your original question about the book, it was really from doing so much of this that we started to realize that the information that we had acquired, having our hands in all of these, was not in any of Michael Doyle's books. It wasn't in any other Marshall books that we used as reference. For example, at the back of our book, there's an entire parts section where we break down every single piece that goes into the construction of the cabinets and the head boxes. And it shows you from year to year where they made the changes in the screws and the changes in the rivets and the changes in the size of logo. And so you can really identify what you have. And that's never been done before. And the other thing was we exposed every single piece in my collection, every angle, top, bottom, sides, front, back, chassis in, chassis out, flipped up. And we show all the parts. So for, somebody, like you, David, who deals with these things a lot, maybe there's something in my collection that you haven't seen a lot of. So you might want to open up the book to the, a particular year and go, oh, there's one. Let me see. Is this one just to compare, to have something to look at.
It's so funny because like I think I've worked on so many amps now. Of all the years, going from coffin badge logos through all the JTM 45s and the 68s and 67s and this and that. It would be a real rarity for me to see something I haven't seen. It's possible.
I got one a couple years ago couple that have stumped Brian and I. During COVID, Eric called and said, hey, I've got this thing called a Big M.
Oh, yeah.
Which it's on the cover of our book. I had never, kind of like Kitchen Marshall and, things like that. There aren't a lot of them. I had never actually seen one. And so it came, I plugged it in, played one note, and poof. And it's like, uh-oh.
Yeah.
And now what do I do? And so I took it to the guy who was, fixing it at the time. He was stumped for hours. And we finally figured out what capacitor it was. Of course, he didn't have any. And so we had to, sort of jerry rig something underneath it to replace this one capacitor that had failed. And he got it running again. But, he said, this is a circuit that you don't see often. I don't know how many of them were made for this German market where you couldn't sell something that said Marshall because somebody had a patent or a copyright or a trademark on the name Marshall.
I know there were specific cabinets too for the Big M cabinets that had a different.
Those are unique.
Go ahead.
There's
thing that there's two different types of Big M cabinets. There are the Big M cabinets that were sold in Germany, which would match the head that Peter is referring to. And then there was another run of Big M cabinets that were made in America in Westbury, New York by Unicord on Long Island. And those just have a singular little M down in the corner of the cabinet.
Right.
And are quite honestly an inferior made cabinet. They're made out of particle board, chipboard. They have nails instead of screws to hold the speakers in. Speakers came in them were a cheap Eminence speaker. They were made to go with the transistor heads that Marshall was selling at the time.
Yeah.
Only made in 1975 and 6.
Yeah, I've seen those. Yep.
So, anyway, this Big M is a weird one. The Kitchen Marshalls, are oddballs, the coffin logos. And
NARBs, the CMIs, then Park, of course, that was the most famous offshoot of.
Right.
But even if you look at all the 67s, there's so many versions of them. Depending on what month, there's, the Black Flag is its own thing. And that, to the best that we can tell, that's November and December of 67. And it's a really small window. And that chassis and those boards don't look like any of the previous months.
Dave had a Black Flag, I think that
I had a Black Flag 100 that Jose modified in 1987 or something, 88. Of course, at the time, Black Flag didn't really mean anything.
Right.
It was an old amp. $300 or $400.
Yeah, I mean,
I have 67.
Brian and I have said this, a lot. I mean, neither of us could rebuy our collections if we had to. Many of the pieces that I was buying starting in the 70s, late 70s, early 80s were $200 in the recycler.
Yeah. normal.
I remember when you know, a 50-watt head was 200. I think a 100-watt head was typically 300. And when they went up to like 400 and 500, it's like, oh my god. And you know, and now you know you can't. First of all, it's very hard to find a really quality piece. They usually typically trade among collectors. So you don't often see them, you know, where eBay, Reverb, or you know, places like that. And you know, it's really tough if you don't really know what you're doing, to buy something like that, because you don't know, is this real? Was it parts changed? At you know, is this
Yeah.
like some of the Blues Breaker combos where they actually took heads and you know took them out of the head box and built a chassis and said, oh look, it's a Blues Breaker combo. No, it isn't.
Oh, what was that company that used to do that? Music Ground.
Yeah. And so, you know, it's
Lashed up Marshalls, basically leftover parts.
You really have to be careful, and you really have to know what you're doing.
Yeah. Hey, by the way, before we dive deep, I just want to mention a few things. So, Dave White, I think last show there were several super chats. There were 3 super chats, Dave. If you're watching, I haven't seen you in the live chat right now, but we're going to address those questions offline. But we're not going to be addressing any Randy Rhodes questions tonight, guys. Everybody who's watching. So if you have any Randy Rhodes questions, we're just not going to be discussing that. We're just going to be talking about the book, Collecting Loud History, and Marshall's and Peter's collection and Brian's experiences and everything like that. So just wanted to get that out. And so Dave, thank you for sending in the super chats. We certainly don't want you to feel like you spent that money and won't get what you paid for. So Peter and Brian will answer your questions offline. But that's it. Okay. And Sloppy Fingers also, you paid a super chat. We'll get to half of it, but I'm not going to address the Randy Rhodes thing. So, all right. With that said, we'll move forward.
I do want to mention something, Dave, that you brushed on about taking that amp to Jose.
Mm-hmm.
So a number of my amplifiers went to Jose. I probably was in and out of his shop, I don't know, 20, 25 times back in, you know, the 82, 83 era.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a lot of them. And unfortunately, I don't have any of them anymore. Because,
that's too bad.
Well, it was my fault because, again, I didn't know what I had. So I was mostly using 73, 74, 75 heads.
Yeah.
And they were all 50 watts. So that's what I would bring him because, you know, everybody in the know knew about Jose and what he did and, you know, who he worked for. And so, you know, he had this tiny little back of a vacuum cleaner store on Van Nuys Boulevard, and he used to go in, and very friendly guy. And, you know, he did one of several mods that were great in older 100-watt heads. And they sounded amazing. They did not sound amazing in newer at the time 50-watt heads. They just weren't a good, you know, design for that. And so ultimately I ended up selling them because to my ear, they just didn't sound right. They didn't sound what I was looking for. And they didn't sound anything like, you know, what he was famous for. But so, you know, but nevertheless, great guy, super sweet guy.
Yeah. Super sweet guy. Always very giving and just a wonderful guy. I liked him a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of that, Dave, is there any update on the Jose
Release fate update?
I think he made date.
Yes, fate.
Yeah.
I like fate though. It's coming. We're waiting on more parts and more transformers and chassis and things to come in the door. They're not in the door yet. So, I mean, it's probably honestly looking like in June, you know, because I haven't physically started making them yet. So, and you know, you got to make a bunch before you put them up for sale.
Right.
Yeah. So can't wait though. There's a lot of people waiting, and the wait list is like, I don't know. The wait list is, I think I haven't checked the last number, but last I think it was at 1,000 people waiting.
Well, did you put me down?
Was I supposed to?
We talked about it.
Well, I can't really, I don't really have access to the list. So if you want to be on the list, it'd be best. How this is working, unfortunately, and it's the only way it's going to work, is everyone gets on the list. When there are amps available, only the list will be notified. We're not making it public knowledge.
Okay.
And I do believe there will be a private link. That's a little up in the air at the moment. To when we say, let's say I make 100, but hypothetically, I make 100 amps right now. There's 100 amps available in our web store. Here's our private link for everyone on this list. You don't get notified if you're not on the list, and we'll give you a couple days notice also, so you're not just blindsided. Hey, it's in an hour.
Mhm.
Someone might not check their email in an hour. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's how that's working. We're not doing it in any other way, shape, or form. And then in Europe, dealers have them, but being the climate that's going on right now with the tariffs and everything else,
Yeah.
this is going to really help us actually to sell it direct.
Yeah.
Because, we're going to start to eat shit on a lot of stuff,
Yeah.
and because every electronic component, everything pretty much in the amp comes from somewhere else.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, our coupling capacitors we use in the main amps, they're made in the US. Now, the foil they use to make them, that might come from somewhere else. I'm not sure. I'm sure it does, actually. So I wouldn't be surprised if those go up in price too. So even if it's made in America, right? What components go into that part that are made elsewhere? The end caps of an electrolytic capacitor, or the foil that's used in the coupling caps we use, or the lead wire. Where's that made?
Right.
I don't even know. I can't even tell you that. So even if it's made here, there's still going to be price increases on all the sort of companies all over the board.
Right.
It's a nightmare.
Yeah, I'm dealing with it. So after the fires, Brian and I decided that my stuff's not going to reside in California any longer, because I'm not going to be a sitting duck. We got evacuated twice, and there isn't going to be a third time where I'm, running out the door with, shoving as many amps in my car as I can. So we got everything out, and it's up north and all over the place. It's no longer in one location. It's in multiple locations, and I just don't want to be, dealing with having to evacuate in 11 minutes like we have.
Yeah, sure.
So there's a place up north where we're trying to deal with fencing and gates and all that stuff. And the initial invoice that I got for part of the job, so they gave me the second part and said, here's the invoice for the other side. And it was a lot more. And I said, why? And he said, because we're now dealing with these materials that are not coming from here, that we're now being hit with a tariff. So what you did 2 months ago, you now are going to pay twice as much for the exact same thing. So yeah, it's
yeah. And this is a good thing. How? I don't know.
right.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it's
chaos.
Not to get into it. It's chaos, but not to try to get into it. But it's like, bring back manufacturing here. Come on. It's well. First of all, hypothetically, let's say you could, which I actually don't think you can, to actually put the infrastructure in to make these parts and make things here. There's billions of dollars involved, billions and billions.
And
Who's
say
paying
and say
billions
you,
and billions of dollars to do this? It's just not. I mean, I don't think the companies actually have it. Even it's just like, and then you still have to have people to actually want to actually do that job and work in that factory. Or what's going to happen is they're going to have robots be doing it.
Right.
So it's not creating any more jobs.
Robot martial heads.
Well, probably not robots and Marshall heads, but I mean, certainly the auto industry.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, the new Marshall heads are robotically soldered these days.
Well,
Oh, I believe that.
They go into a machine, and I think they do 6 or 8 PC boards at the same time.
Oh yeah. No, yeah, that for sure. I understand that. Yeah.
there's a YouTube clip where there's a tour of the factory that was done a couple weeks ago, and they show all the automation. It's pretty incredible.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
Certainly the stuff that we love was all done, by people sitting at desks with big magnifying glasses and soldering irons.
Yeah, all in a row.
Yeah.
Tracy Guns is in the chat watching the show. What's up, Tracy? Hope you're doing good. I think he's on the road or heading on the road.
He is on the road. I just had dinner with him the other night.
Yeah, you guys.
Hey, Tracy.
I saw that picture. I was like, shit. I wish I was there. Is 67 the first super lead?
100 watt? I would believe was 67 the first 100 watt?
It's a technicality.
Yeah.
There were lead 100 watters made at the end of 66, but they didn't say super lead on the back panel.
Yeah. So technically, I guess that's correct then.
Yes.
Not sure you necessarily want the 67 one. It's
well, again, if it's a black flag from later in 67,
Yeah.
you absolutely want it. There's also 67 JTM 45 100s, which I guess technically would be the first 100 watt.
Yes, I think that's how it developed.
They made super leads, they made super basses, they made super PAs.
But the only one that had super on it at the time was PA.
Right.
Panel 100 watt heads.
Right.
It wasn't until they got to make the gold panel that they actually said super bass or super lead on the back or super tremolo.
Mm-hmm.
The white panel stuff just said tremolo or super PA or just plain.
For me, I love a lead spec circuit mostly. I mean, I get the point of a JTM 45 style circuit, and I understand in certain styles of music and things. But personally, I'm a little more rock, so I personally like a lead spec circuit. So, really for me, the 100 watt Marshalls really came into existence in 68 with a 12 series amp, especially the 12 series. Slightly lower plate voltage, just really gooey, just really great.
And that's when they started exporting them as well.
Yeah.
I don't know that 67s were actually sold here. I know 68s were, 69. And, of course, when Hendrix and Clapton and people started seeing these things and wanting them in the States, they at the time didn't have a way to export them until, they had distributors and
End of 1997 had some U.S. made amplifiers that were hardwired.
No.
I own a 67 from the last series that was made in 67 of 100 watters, and they were hardwired for the USA. That would have been the first ones.
Okay. Mine are all have the Bogan connector.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
But all of this, lots and lots and lots of the 68s are USA designed.
Yeah.
Hey, by the way, just out of curiosity, are you guys seeing my stuff in reverse? Does my shirt say Hard Rock backwards?
Nope.
No.
So it says Hard Rock for you guys?
Yeah.
Yep, look correct for me.
All right, for me, it's on my screen, it's backwards. So it's funny. Okay. I don't know why. That's the first time I've ever noticed that before. Okay, so let me get to this super chat from Sloppy Fingers, but we're not going to address the second part. He said, Mark, NHL Battle of Florida should be good, huh? Yes, I'm looking forward to the Panthers playing again. I'm going to be going to some games. Looking forward to it. There's some other questions, but I wanted to get back to you, Peter, and talk to you about what's the oldest Marshall you have, or what's the first Marshall that you would have in your collection
Well,
that's
the
oldest?
oldest from when it was built, or what have I owned the longest?
I'd say, oh, that's good. Good, both of them. I'd say, what's the oldest and the one you have the longest? Sure.
The very first one I bought a half stack. Again, I had no idea. It was from a store called Freedom, and it was on Sunset. And it was I want to say it was like a 72 or 73 50-watt head, and it was a basket weave cabinet that had been spray painted black. The grill was black, and it was probably a 68. So that was the first half stack that I owned. I think the oldest piece in my collection. So our book starts in the year 1964. Technically, Marshall was already in business in 64, but that's the oldest thing that I own, and that's a coffin logo head.
I love how those look.
JTM 45. And then our book goes from 64 through 1980. I do have some stuff. I've got a couple JCM 800s, and I've got a JCM 800 combo, and a few other things post 1980. But we focus on 64 to 80 because we just felt like, those are the years where 99% of what we own land in, and that's what we know about. And our book would have been 2,000 pages if we tried to take it in the 2000s and the JVMs and all that stuff. And that's all great stuff. It's just not a part of our collections.
Yeah. So how many amps do you own?
Currently,
Question.
And do you know?
Yeah. So I become pretty proficient with Excel, and I didn't really know what I had until we started photographing the book. Brian and I realized that in order to get through everything that was at my house, plus the stuff that he was bringing down from his house, plus a couple pieces that we ended up borrowing from Dave Amato because neither of us had, and we felt like they were really important to get in the book. We had to set up an assembly line because we had X number of days to get through this. And, we had to do a certain number of pieces every day. So we had to build a spreadsheet and, a Dropbox and folders and really be systematic about it. So as a result of that, and making sure that everything was labeled and named and in the correct folder and photographed, and what did we done and what did we not done, and how many did we get done today, and what do we need to get done tomorrow, we built spreadsheets for it. So the long answer to your short question is currently I have 100 cabinets, just under 100 heads, about 20 combos, and then a bunch of miscellaneous stuff.
Wow.
So I'm going to say 225. I'm sorry, Brian.
I have a little over 130, and I also am caretaker of Dave Amato's collection, and he has just a little over 106. So between the three of us guys, we've exceeded 500 total pieces between us.
we're inching up on close to 600.
So these are the guys that you're up against on eBay and Reverb when there's a vintage amp up.
No, they don't buy that stuff anymore.
No,
well, maybe,
yeah.
I will tell you once in a great while. So, Dave, I told you the story when I came to see you, and I walked in and I saw that
fawn, yeah.
That I was gonna somehow get that thing in the trunk of my car before the end of our visit. I for whatever reason, the fawn has eluded me my whole collecting career. I have 3 fawn cabinets. I could not find a fawn head. And not long after I saw you, one appeared on Reverb. And it was, priced fairly. And I guess it sat there for a couple of weeks and the guy needed to get rid of it. So he saw that I kept going back to look at it, and he offered me substantially less than what he was asking for it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, well, God, I can't say no to this. And it was priced at what it would have been, what, Brian, like 10 years ago, maybe?
It was priced at the same rate as you'd expect to pay for a blackhead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and the fawn stuff is really hard to find. It's really hard to find in good condition.
No, wait a minute. You said something very important. You have 3 fawn cabinets.
Yes. But now one head.
One head.
Yeah.
But do you have 2 slants and a straight, or do you have 2 straights and a slant?
I have 2 straights and a slant.
See, now this head could really use a fawn cabinet.
Well,
I knew where you were going.
We'll talk, because I could really use a Jose head. So we'll do a little bartering, perhaps.
Oh boy. Yeah, except the Jose heads go for an insane amount of money.
Well, these cabinets aren't cheap either.
Yeah.
We'll figure it out.
Oh, you mean the new Jose head? Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. We'll figure something out.
Oh, that we could do something maybe.
Okay.
Yeah, you were thinking a real Jose head. That's
Yeah, I have one sitting right there, a real Jose head.
If only I had 6 of them.
And I have a deal brokered right now that it's going to be a lot of money.
Joe Holmes has a ton of them.
Yep. Yeah.
And his sound great.
That's 5 figures.
And for anyone who cares, Joe agreed to come on the show.
And he's a sweetheart of a guy.
Yeah, no, he's an awesome guy. I've known him for a long time.
Yeah.
But he has agreed to come on the show, although I do think he has to come here to do it. So it'd be like me and Jake sitting here, but I gotta hook up a better mic setup for that, for 2 people.
Yeah, you just need 2 mics, I think.
Yeah.
Hey, let's quickly talk about our sponsors. All right, Sweetwater. Make sure you guys check out the link below in our description. We have an affiliate link. Sweetwater is a sponsor of our show, and if you buy anything through the affiliate link, it just gives us a little kickback, a little commission to the show. We appreciate that. Also, check out fixpedalboards.com. Tim and the guys over there, they've got amazing products for your pedal boards, as well as like a rack drawer for pedals. Dave, anything else you want to add there?
All sorts of accessories, little lifts and things for pedal boards that are really useful, easy to deal with.
Yep. And we also have Thomann music.
For all you people in Europe who never seem to buy anything from Thomann.
We just got a small little commission.
Yeah.
Them. So yeah, I mean, check it out, guys, if you're even interested in Harley Benton stuff. And
you can buy to the US.
Exactly. And this is the website for the book for Collecting Loud History.
Which is the only place that you can get the book. We opted not to go with Amazon because I've been asked many times, when is it going to be on Amazon, or when, this is the only place that you can get it. And it allows us to control everything so that we know what people are paying for it, and that they're not being, upcharged, and we know what the taxes are and the shipping, and we, get to, just keep our hands on it. So if you want the book, that's where you go to get it. There are still some available from the first printing. Again, they will come to us on the 20th of May. We start shipping at that point. We'll hope to have them all out by the end of May. And
guys, I sat here. Peter brought me the book, and I sat here, the prototype of the book at least, and I sat here and looked through the whole thing. And man, it's just beautiful. For anyone who loves old Marshall amps, which I do, it's just like you thumb through it and you're like, ooh, look at that one. Look at that one.
Let me give
it's amazing.
Let me give some credit, because Brian and I are really, really fortunate. I was involved in another couple of books, and I met a designer named Denny Anderson when I was working on this documentary, and he came and said, you know, what can I do? I'm a graphic artist. He worked at Universal at the time, and he designed the previous books. And so when Brian and I had this book idea, I said to him, honestly, if we can't get Denny to design it, I don't know that I want to do it. And, you know, Brian didn't really know, hadn't worked with Denny, but once we started to work with him, Brian quickly realized why I said that. And he comes at everything just differently than, you know, we think of things. He's an artist. And so I would present, I'd say, here's how I want the pages laid out. You know, I want this and this and this. And I would make these little pencil sketches, and he would look at them and say, okay. And then he would send me something a day or two later, which looked nothing like what I gave him and was 10 times better. And I would send it to Brian. It's like, holy shit, you know, sorry if I can't swear.
You feel free, swear as much as you want.
So Denny Anderson is as important to this book as Brian and I. And then we had two photographers. We started out with one guy who shot the first, I don't know, half of the book. And lives in Prague, and it was just too difficult to work our schedules out. And he could only be here for a certain amount of time. And he ended up having a kid, and it just we needed somebody here.
Who was that?
The original photographer? Yeah. His name's Pete. But he has a different name. I got him through David Phillips. He shoots a lot of stuff for some of the stores here. He's a guy from here, but he moved to Prague.
Okay, now different.
Anyway, great guy. We just couldn't manage the schedules, and we needed somebody locally. So we went to a guy named Albert Molinaro, who used to own a store on Sunset called Guitar for Us. He owned it with Howie Huberman.
Yeah.
And Albert is an unbelievable guitar collector, and an even better human being, and an absolutely insane photographer. So Albert shot the second half of our book.
That's cool.
And then we met a web designer. I have a friend named Vicki Hamilton who used to manage Guns N' Roses back.
Yeah.
Managed the band I was in. And Vicki introduced me to this young girl who lives in Colorado. And she said, you know, she's this amazing web designer and artist. And I didn't realize how amazing she, you know, what I should have paid more attention to what Vicki said, because she really elevated us. And she drew, we have a t-shirt for Collecting Loud History, and she drew that, and she's really helped us, and she runs her website, and she's launched all the socials and everything. And then we met a printer, Clear Image Printing, a guy named Paul Standell, because we were told, you know, you guys really need to print this 600-page book in China because it's going to be unaffordable here. And, you know, you send it to them, and then however many months, you know, they send the book back.
Good thing you didn't do that now.
No. And, you know, we just kept getting pushed. It's got to go to China. It's got to go to China. And Brian and I fought it because we wanted to keep, number one, we wanted to keep it in the U.S., but we wanted to be able to be hands-on. So it's done, you know, here in the Valley. And I go there, you know, while it was being printed a couple times a week. And we sat with everybody and went through the colors and went through the paper and went through, you know, the types of glue and the stitching, and, you know, literally, you know, looked through, you know, every single page for things. And they were so meticulous. So anyway, between Brian and I and Kaylee, her name's Kaylee Credit, and Albert Molinaro and Denny and Paul, it's the six of us. So I don't want Brian and I to take all the credit, because yes, we wrote it. Yes, we, you know, lived it. Yes, it's our gear, but we could have only got it to a certain point. And it's with these four people that we were able to get to the finish line.
So when will the book be available? Because it says pre-order. Is
May
it available?
21st.
May 21st.
We start shipping.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
Well,
You guys want it if you are a Marshall fan and you love looking at pictures, because that's what it's gonna give you that. Ooh, look at that one.
Well, I can give you a quick.
That's
So
a big
here,
book.
for example, there's an orange head.
Oh, look at that. I love orange ones.
This is what the typical pages look like.
I wish
So
I could buy Tolex like that now.
So you can see, the circuit board. You can see close-up shot of the filter caps and the tubes and the transformers. And then for every head in the book and every cabinet, there's a story of, how it was purchased and where it came from, and
Oh, that's awesome.
and why we purchased it, and what was special about it, and what we did to it. Because the first chapter in the book is about Brian and I and our backgrounds and how we met and how we started this whole thing. And the second chapter of the book is called Disclaimer, because a lot of the stuff in our collection looks like it was never played and it was never, taken out of the box. And in fact, a lot of it was never played and never taken out of the box. Because we've been at this for so long and started this in the 70s, we were literally buying things in boxes from Guitar Center and from some of the stores back in the day, Nadine's and all these stores, Bettman Music and things like that. So we bought them and kept them in the boxes and kept them in our garage or our house or storage container. And so when you see these things that look brand new, they are brand new. And then there are other pieces that, looked like they were dragged across stage floors and, were missing Tolex and had broken grills. I bought cabinets that literally had chicken wire for a grill and were stuffed with R30 insulation, in the inside and, in various states of disrepair, something that was in a flood. So you can see, the water line on the inside of the cabinet. So there's been things like that were literally taken down to the finger joints and repaired. And the beauty about Brian is that he is the only guy that has access to all of the correct parts and pieces. And so if you're going to do, it's like you have a Ferrari and you crash the Ferrari. You don't take the Ferrari to the junkyard. You have $1 million car. So you're going to put it on a frame straightener and you're going to do whatever you can to take this very expensive machine and fix it. And
it's like restoring an old house.
Correct. And
someone fucked it all up and then you're going to fix it.
Right. And it's the same with these. And so when I met Brian and I saw, first of all, the quality of his work, and then the extent to which he goes to make everything 100% correct, and then his relationship with Marshall that dates back to, his meeting Jim Marshall and Jim basically anointing him and saying, "You're the guy." And, Marshall then sending, anybody to Brian who wanted something restored. So
I've been by Marshall since the mid 80s to do nothing but cosmetic repairs for endorsees, pro players, collectors, and so forth. I don't touch any of the electronics other than wiring speaker cabinets. But I've had hundreds and hundreds of Marshall products down to the bare bones, stripped all apart, refurbished everything, and then reassembled them.
How'd you get into that?
I started doing it for a couple of pieces myself, and then I started doing a couple for some friends that had some beat up stuff. And several years after I first started doing that, I managed to get hooked up with Jim Marshall at a NAMM show, and one thing led to another, and I got all the authorizations and approvals from the cheeses, and I was then able to establish, which I've had for over 40 years, I have a Marshall Parts account. So everything that I buy comes directly from Marshall to me. And I've been fortunate enough to purchase things that they just don't sell to the regular general public.
Or sell anymore, probably.
And there's a lot of things that they just don't have. So we've done exhaustive searches. And I was very lucky. Brian and I were both very lucky. About 10 years ago, I bought a piece on Reverb from a guy in England named James Wyatt. And he's talked a lot about it in our book. And he wrote to me and he said, "Hey, is there anything else you're looking for?" And I said, boy, did he just open up Pandora's box. And as it turns out, his father was a big collector and he was a big collector. And he knows where all the old Marshalls are in England and all the parts. And as much as last week, I have what is it, Brian? A 71
70s purple combo.
It's an artist combo, and it's missing the two handles on the top of it. And to find those little handles, it's not the same that a handle that's on a head. They're smaller. It's like, looking for hen's teeth. And he knew I was looking for it. And last week he said, "Guess what I found?" And they're on the way here. So as recently as a week ago, I'm still buying parts for things that are missing, or, Bulgin jacks and, just all kinds of stuff that Marshall is not making. I mean, those, the old Bulgins, you can't, because they're no longer approved. They're Bakelite, and, they can't use those parts anymore.
I wish someone would make them.
Yeah, I know. It's just like the glue, that it's got to be made somewhere.
Or at least some sort of facsimile that works for that.
Yeah. So when you find one, they're usually $100 or $200, and you just have to pay for it because they're just not made. So many of the parts that we get are from Marshall. Brian just got a big order, and he's got a couple of pieces of mine, and that we were waiting for parts for. And then, we'll probably continue to get parts, and, as many as we have, we still get things that, cross our paths where we go, we just got to buy this. We can't, somebody will want it if we don't, like the Fawn cabinet that you want.
I bought a Marshall. I bought
what speakers are in it?
Think that would be sooner or later discontinued, or they were already from the past, and as soon as they ran out of the parts at Marshall, they wouldn't have any more of them. So I squirrel holed away a lot of special vinyls and grills and so forth over the years to have for specific projects.
Yeah, sure.
To answer your question, David, that cabinet is in the book. The one the two that I recently got I got after all the photographs were taken. I have one that is in the book. I think it's blackback 25s, if it's a 78, that would be the correct speaker.
Yeah.
But I can send you, the pictures of it that are in the book.
Are all the ones you have blackbacks?
Yes.
Okay.
Brian, we took those two backs apart last time, right? And they were blackbacks.
Yes, they were the two Fawn cabinets that you bought. Somebody had replaced the original speakers in them and added 25-watt blackbacks.
Yeah, so
30-watt blackbacks.
But they are the correct. They're not what originally came with it, but they are the correct speaker. I think the dates were a couple months off from what the cabinet would be dated as, but
in 1979 is a transitional year for Marshall. And 90% of the Marshall cabinets sold in that year had the new Marshall label speakers on them, which were actually 5-watt Celestians.
Yeah.
And not the blackback 25s or the blackback 30s. So in 1979, only a few cabinets at the beginning of the year have blackbacks in them. All the rest of the production run has Marshall label speakers in them. And what a lot of people would do is like, hey, I want to match my cabinet that I have from 3 or 4 years earlier. So they would yank out the 65-watt Marshall label speakers and set them aside and go find themselves a cabinet from 2 or 3 years earlier and steal the 25s or 30s out of it.
I mean, I like the 65s also.
I'm not a real huge fan of them, but they have their place.
But by the way, David, looking for speakers, Brian will tell you I have about 200 that are just in boxes in closets that are not in cabinets. So I'm bound to have something that will suit you.
Oh, that for my other cab.
Yeah. So we went so crazy with trying to make these things perfect. A lot of the cabinets that I bought had speakers changed out, or they were,
Yeah.
some were correct, but some weren't. And so they might have been the right, greenback, but they weren't correct to the cabinet. So they were taken out. And then I searched sometimes for years before I would find the right greenback, the right month to what this cabinet was. So I would take the 4, put them in boxes,
Oh my God.
rinse and repeat over and over and over and over and over again until there's now, 200 boxes of speakers all over the place.
I have dozens and dozens of greenback, creamback, blackback, grayback, 25s and 30s that I've hoarded over time, and I just wait until I get pairs or matched quads, and then I find something proper to throw them into.
Mhm.
Wow. Gotta love it. Gotta love
You
it.
guys are crazy.
Yeah.
You have to hoard things over time because eventually you will get a set or something like that, and you can do something with it. But sometimes it happens fast, but sometimes it takes years to get what.
Yeah.
Sure.
Patience.
Yeah.
We're actually Brian has a cabinet of mine. We're loading it this weekend, and it requires 25-watt base cone greenbacks with the 014 cone. Those are super, super rare. You usually see that cone in a 30, not in a 25. But that's what would be in this cabinet. And, by dumb luck, I bought something from Eric Johnson a couple months ago. It had these 4 speakers in it, but they were not correct to the cabinet that I bought from him. So the cabinet that I bought from him ended up getting the correct speakers that I had, and I took the 4 out of these, and they're going into this cabinet that Brian's got that is correct for that. So
it all works out.
It all works out. Happy ending.
Eventually.
So, question from Kaylee Credit: will there be a volume 2 of Collecting Loud History?
I can answer that. First of all, Kaylee Credit is our web designer, and she's a genius. If anybody needs a website built or managed or some art done, she is incredible. And she's asking because she probably wants us to do volume 2. We love working with her. And Brian and I have talked about this. Volume 1, which is what's going to be shipped very soon, is primarily my collection. I would say 95% my collection. And then a few pieces of Brian's and a few pieces from Dave Amato, like I said. So volume 2 is going to be Brian's collection. And we just couldn't get to everything. We didn't want the book to be 1,000 pages. We wanted to have something to look forward to if this thing was a success. And my stuff at the time was a little bit easier to access than Brian's stuff. But, we pretty much decided that volume 2 will focus on his collection. I will have acquired a few pieces. I have acquired a few pieces since we photographed this. So the short answer to her question is yes, there will be a volume 2. It will feature Brian's collection. I don't know how quickly we're going to start on it. We sort of have to get this thing shipped and sold and deal with what's in front of us. But yeah, that's the plan.
Well, I've already seen several orders tonight, including myself. I placed it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm looking at my phone, and my phone has been pinging a lot. So this is great. And Brian,
you guys don't even you haven't even seen it. Go to the website and is the promo of the book on the website that I saw on social media.
Yeah, I think there's
kind of.
We had Chicago Music Exchange did 2 for us. They were very kind to do 2 videos. There's a guy in Washington who got a hold of the prototype, and he has a really active channel, and he reviewed it. So that one might not have been up there. I'm not sure what Kaylee has up now because she changes things up a lot. She did build a flip book, so you look at the flip, hit a little arrow and it takes you to another page and another page and another page. So you can see the images that way. But I think if you go to YouTube and just type in Collecting Loud History, you'll be able to see all the a number different clips that have been built around it.
Awesome. Yeah, I would show the website, but for some reason I just got a new computer and I'm having difficulty sharing other pages. So that's why I'm showing this. So guys, check out
The website's pretty cool.
Yes.
I'm looking at it right now.
Yeah, she did an amazing job. And and Brian and I talk about again without her artistry and Denny's artistry, it would be a very, very different looking book and a very different looking website. It's just not what Brian and I do.
They make us look.
Yeah, these folks from the photographers to Kaylee to Denny, these guys make us look amazing. And this is really an art book. It's 7 pounds. It's 596 glossy color pages with a hardcover. And even if you're not, you don't love the material or it's not your thing, going through the photographs, even for people who aren't gear nerds like we are, guitar players or amp collectors or amp guys, just going through the pictures, they're really colorful and gorgeous, and they pop off the page, and it's just a great looking book to just sit down and flip through.
I'm sure. So I'm super
it's like, believe me, it's.
I can't wait.
You want it, people. If you're interested in the amps, you want it.
Yeah, if you're a Marshall,
you just want it. You just want it. Trust me.
Are there any amps in there besides Marshall, or it's all Marshall?
No, well,
and all derivatives of Marshall.
Funny you mentioned that, because we have a photograph that was taken in an upstairs room in my house, and it's where a lot of the Marshalls used to live. And there's a mirror on one wall, and you see in the mirror, because the photographer didn't realize it, but the wall of Vox amps in the mirror behind that you can see. And it was like, oh shit, what are we going to do with these? So I do have a lot of Voxes. I have a lot of Fenders. So we actually photoshopped them out of the mirror, because we didn't want anything competing with Marshall. Vox and Fender make amazing products, and I love their stuff. We wanted to focus this book on that brand. So
that makes sense.
Yeah, that's cool.
And there's a couple guitars. We shot a lot outside because the time of year we did it. I think the first session we did was, Brian, correct me if I'm wrong, late April, and the second one we did was June. So we used magic hour a lot, like sort of 6 to 7:30, 8, and it was sort of at the end of our day. So right when we were really exhausted, then we would start hauling everything outside and setting it up. A number of those shots have guitars in them, especially the period correct stuff, because I have a lot of Charvel 78, 79, 80. So
nice.
Anything from that we shot from that era would typically have a Charvel in it. So
very nice.
But that's kind of the only thing. I think there's a couple of Strats.
Various pictures that we shot. Yep.
Yeah, I think there's this white 70 Strat in with a white stack, and I think there's I don't know.
That with the popular.
Yeah, there's a bunch of Strats in there with corresponding year Marshalls.
Okay,
cool.
Harmonicaster, switching it up here. Will there ever be actually a new tube circuit?
A new tube circuit. I mean, like, tubes are building blocks, right? So it's always the same thing. It's just a question of the parts that you surround them with. New. I mean, you could say if you come up with, the 5 parts that surround this one 12AX7 preamp tube, it's a new circuit, because it's not exactly something from a Marshall or exactly something from something else. No, you know what? Here's why. People don't actually want to hear something new. Generally speaking,
I tend to agree with that.
they're going for something that is familiar to them in their mind and what the sound that's in their head, and that's not really a new sound, you know what I mean? It's never a new sound. It maybe cycles through different eras of sounds, but not nothing new is better.
The perfect example is what Marshall just brought out at NAMM show, and they brought out these amps which were recreations, sort of modernized recreations of the 1959 and the JCM 800.
Yeah,
the modified, the Jose.
Yeah, it's the same stuff we've all been doing for a million years. They just decided 20 years later to catch up.
Right, yeah. Exactly.
I mean, basically.
And I think it's the other thing that is helping Fender and Gibson. And, they are recreating the 58, 59, 60 Les Paul, and they're redoing all the cool 60s Strats and 50s Strats, because they realize that they're trying to find the originals are impossible and unaffordable, and people still love them, and that's why it's a huge vintage market. So let's take the vintage stuff and recreate it. They have better tools now, and better technology and CAD, programs and things like that to completely recreate these things with 100% originality
and consistency.
And they're doing great work. So it goes back to this. It's like, is there anything new? And it's like, nobody really wants any. I guess new would be modeling. But what is modeling? It's taking the old stuff and recreating it, and
they're basically modeling old Marshalls and modified Marshalls, and classic circuits, basically, or on a new amp like high gain, something maybe like.
I often say nothing new is better. There's more technology now. Yes, theoretically, you can make something more consistently, like say CNCs with guitars and stuff. But generally speaking, the wood that's used is worse. The old growth trees are gone. They don't exist anymore. There's not enough. And it came up. One day I was, I think, unscrewing the back of a cabinet or something, an old Marshall cabinet, because I had to do something for someone that wanted a speaker changed or something. And the screws that are in the cabinet, the original screws, are made of such an amazing metal. Yeah. It's like if they hadn't been stripped over the years or something, they're like hard as a rock. It's a work of art. The screw is a work of art.
Actually,
where you get a new screw made in China or somewhere or some country, and the plating is horrible and it breaks, and it's not very hard metal. It's not done very well. And that day I was just marveling at the screw because it just screwed in so well and it was so perfect. And I'm like going, fuck, let's just feel this screw. And you drop it on the table and it's like clunk, and I'm like, yeah, nothing's made like it used to be.
Well,
that's with old metal in cars, and that's with all of this. Well, yes, there is more technology. Yes, you can do more, but it seems like the surrounding materials aren't able to keep up with the technology, so to speak, or it's just shittier.
Including materials. The wood cabinets are made out of compared to.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier about rebuilding a house. So if you tear apart the drywall or the plasterboard and you look at how the house was built with the 2x4s, and then you try to go go match that 2x4 at a lumber place and say, hey, I need a 2x4. It's going to be half the size of the 2x4 that was used when your house was built.
Yeah, a full dimensional lumber is what it's called.
Right.
And no, I mean, the house I'm in is built in 1947 or something, and you look at, in the garage, all open walls, you look at, that's a 2x4.
Right.
It is 2 inches by 4 inches.
Right.
Exactly. And also it's hard as a rock.
Yeah.
It's like, drilling, even like screwing a screw into it, you're like, damn. It's like, and if you look at the side of one of those 2x4s too, you see all the growth rings of the tree, and they're, it's dense with the rings. And then you look at a new 2x4 and there's 4 rings or something, or 6 rings. That's it. And
well, go lift up a 1968 cabinet with 30-watt speakers in it, and a 2x4 in the center for bracing and metal handles, and then go lift up a cabinet made 10 years later.
Yeah. Well, also though, there was some, I always think there's, like some 70s cabinets, right, that I always felt the wood was nice and dry, because they had that knock to them, that if you just pat them on the back, so to speak, pat them on the ass, you could feel this resonant quality to the cabinet. Some of the early cabinets were really stiff and heavy, but then when they got into the early 70s and stuff, some of those are a little knockier, and those sound amazing to me. Yeah. And I feel newer wood is sort of like not as dry, so to speak. I mean, I know it's ply, and I know there's a lot of glue, and the glue is different that they're using with the ply, but it's not
densities of the Baltic birch plywood. If you're familiar with multi-core birch plywood or multi-core hardwoods that are used for audio purposes, it depends on the number of cores in a ply, and Marshall at different times, the actual thickness never changed for their cabinets.
5/8,
but the number of layers of ply within that thickness did change a couple of times over the course of them producing stuff.
So isn't it like 9 ply versus 11 ply?
They used 11 ply on all the JCM 800s and newer stuff. The older stuff was 13 ply.
No, 13. That was it.
And some of the stuff, there are occasional things that were made with 15 ply with the same thickness.
Okay.
Kind of rare.
So, Peter, what amps you got behind you?
What doesn't have behind them?
Let me look. So, top left is a JTM 45, probably a 66. Center is a 68, 50 watt. On the right is another JTM 45, and on the bottom row, on the left is a super bass from 68. The center is a super trem from 69, and on the right is a 67, late 67 JMP 100.
And then over on the right there, your left, you have a red PA head of some era.
Let me see if I can get the.
It kind of followed, yeah.
Camera, yeah. There's red, white. The red one, the bottom one's a PA head. I want to say 70. No, 69. I think above it, the red one is a 70. They're both hundreds. The white one's bottom one's a super trem. It's a metal panel. The top one is a super lead. They're both 70, I think.
Love it. Oh, there's an orange cabinet over there too.
Yeah.
The camera only goes so far. Oh yeah, the orange. Yeah, there we go.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and then
the door's in the way.
There's a blue one. There's a yellow one. There's a green one, a red one. There's a bunch of stuff in here.
Wow, so cool.
That's amazing.
Yeah, this is a fun room. I just had our buddy Michael Landau here last week when he came to pick up that that head that you went through.
Did he go, I'll take them all?
Well, it was fun because I don't know that he had played through some of these before. And so he was just in the room plugging into different things and listening. And you know, when you're that standing 2 feet away from somebody that plays like him and, you know, through these things that you've never heard sound so good, it's fun.
No,
my
totally.
God.
Yeah, absolutely. Amazing.
That would be amazing. So are there pictures of amps in the book that are restored?
100%.
Or are they okay?
100%. And every one of them that's been restored is called out in the description.
Okay.
You know, I've said this one is restored and this is what we did to it. This, you know, the Tolex is original, but the grill is different. The logo is different. We changed the screws on the back cover. We changed the input jack, whatever. And then the next one is, well, this was a ground up restoration. It was taken down to, you know, the finger joints. And then the next one over will be, this is exactly how I bought it. So they're all varying descriptions of, you know, some things are bone stock. A lot of it's bone stock. And then there's things that, you know, Brian and I went through either just, you know, we gave it a good bath and took a little bit of glue and, you know, glued little spots that were fraying or things like that, all the way down to, you know, completely ripping it apart and starting over.
Right. All right.
Yeah, again, it's like buying that old house that you want to restore.
Right.
You know, someone painted the outside of it in some terrible color and it's just not, you know.
I've had the displeasure of removing a lot of painted, a lot of the lighter colored ones over the years. People paint because they wanted to match their black gear, and they weren't worth.
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah,
Right.
white amp, painted black. Sure, why not?
And then, you know, the paint soaks through it, you know, and it's down into 2 or 3 layers. And then, you know, you want to change the color of the Tolex, and you can't really, if it's black paint, you can't make it white because the black's going to bleed through. So yeah, the painting of them, and believe me, Brian just did one of mine that was, you know, he said, why did you buy this? And why I bought it, because it was, you know, the right price, and it was what it was, but it was like such a pain in the ass to do, hours and hours and hours. I mean, you know, Brian, yeah, it was very frustrating.
Yeah. Question from David Tickle. David Tickle.
Hey, I know him.
You know, David. Question for Peter and Brian. With all the Marshalls in your collection, what's your opinion on the build quality of a new Marshall 1959 hand-wired versus original?
So look, and I think everybody
I have an opinion.
Everybody would agree. If you're looking at both of them and somebody says, which one do you want? You want the original one. I think the you know, because I'm a vintage guy. I like vintage cars. I like vintage gear. I like vintage furniture. I like old things. Which one's going to sound better? Well, the new one will sound the same as the next one that was built to it, as the next one, as the next one. The old one may be great, or it might be a dog. You don't know what you're going to get. Because
the dogs can always be tamed.
But they're not all the same. You know, the quality control was not the same. The transformers were not wound the same way. They weren't from the same manufacturer. You know, early in the day, you know, just to get them out of the building, it's like, just run down to the store and grab a couple of these and let's just get them in so we get the order out. You know, as they progress, they get more quality control. And they're more similar. So I don't know. I would take the older one, just because that's what I love. But David, do you have a different opinion?
I mean, as far no. I mean, I would agree. I mean, the older one all day. But as far as the quality of a hand wired current one, the wiring and the build quality is quite nice. What falls short, generally speaking, is I feel that the newer Transformers don't quite sound. They sound basically the same, but a slight harsher version. of an original. The original is just a little richer and a little less harsh on the top end. And the power transformer is not as critical, but the output transformer mostly I'm talking about. The overall construction though technically is done well on the hand wired. It's well wired in the inside, so I mean that's my thought.
Okay.
I mean you can get better replacement transformers from like Haybor transformers or something than the hand wired output transformer. There's also a few little tricks in the circuit you can do to actually kind of compensate for that transformer a little bit. So I mean you can make a new one sound really good, like kind of like an old one, you know.
Yeah, it's
just it takes a little finessing,
little time and money,
little time and finessing.
Yep. Ant-Man has a super chat, but I don't see a question from him, so I don't know. Don't see anything else. Steve Malt says no question, just wishing you all well, loving the show tonight. Thank you. That's awesome.
Very kind.
Yeah,
buy a book.
Yeah, thank you.
Ian Ferguson says, I have a bunch of books from Headstamp Publishing. They are gorgeous, amazing pictures, similar prices. Yeah. It looks like you get what you pay for. You
get what you pay for. You're getting a beautiful hardcover, massive book with the unbelievable pictures, and it's well worth. Worth, if not worth more than you're charging for it.
Let me speak to that, because one of the first things you said to me when I presented you with the book, you said, what are you charging for it? And I said 150, and your response was, why so little? And it's the same thing that Andrew at Chicago Music Exchange said when he came up to us at NAMM. He said, what are you charging? I said 150, and he said, why isn't this 200? And so to answer that, we just felt like, especially in this economy and what we're all going through, to ask people to put out that much money in several months in advance of getting something. And especially, you have to know your audience. The fact is that these books cost us over $100 a piece to make. That's just, by printing it in the United States and not going abroad with it. And paying the taxes that we have to pay here and, everything else, it's over $100 a book. And then we have to unbox them and then rebox them and buy all of the stuff that, goes into the packing and trips to the post office and the tape and the bubble wrap and, blah, blah, blah. All of the packing supplies were very expensive. So by the time we're done with everything, it's break even for us. $150 is break even. I think once they're out there, we're probably going to raise the price. We talked about that initially. We told, people, this is the price for pre-ordering. Once they're out, the price is going to go up. But Brian and I didn't do this to get rich. We didn't do this, to make a profit. We did it because we felt like this material in the book was not out in any books, period. You couldn't see these kind of photographs. You couldn't see the images of, the circuit boards. You couldn't see all the colors. You couldn't see all the parts. And we just felt like the book needed to be done. And if we didn't do it, the information would die with us. And so that's really why we put it out. It's our pet project. We've worked together since 1994. And, it meant something to us. And, we just felt like we just needed to get this out. So that's what we did.
Well, we appreciate you doing it. Tracy says, congrats, Brian and Peter. Great success.
Tracy's a good dude. I met him.
He is a good guy.
Not to go back to the Randy Rhoads thing, but there was one screening of the documentary and he came. And that was the first night I met him. And he was very cool.
He's awesome.
I haven't seen him since. We have a lot of mutual friends, but I thought he was a really nice guy and I enjoyed meeting him.
I actually did shows around Southern California and so forth with LA Guns back in the 90s, in between some Mario Speedway.
There you
Oh,
go.
cool. That's awesome.
Haven't seen the guy in years.
Yeah, he just came out with an album, I think. LA Guns just released an album recently. Yeah, just like within the past week, or maybe it's coming out.
Yeah, no, in the past week. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, okay. Ben Tom, 1974 4x12 in yellow. Holy shit. I've never seen one of those before. I've never seen one of those before either.
Well, I have 2 basket weave yellows and what, Brian, 4 from the 70s?
About that, I got to have several cabinets.
That's not something you see.
Yellow was an option from Marshall from the first ones were made in 1969, and the last ones that they did was at some point in 76.
Here's the other thing. So there's a number of stores that I bought things from, like Killer Vintage is one of them. Norm's Rare Guitars is another one. I bought a lot of stuff from him, things that he had like in his warehouse. A few things he didn't even know he had. I unearthed them from the back room. They were behind, 3 or 4 layers of Fender amps. And but Norm, every time a Marshall walks in, calls me and says, "Hey, this thing just came here." Same as the guys from Killer Vintage, same as the guys, same as my friend James Wyatt in England. And so when you have a number of people who call you and say, "This just walked in, do you want it?" before it even goes out on the floor. And there have been times when I said, "Hey, I've got this white Marshall. I have a yellow, I have a red, I have a thing." And the answer is yes, because they're so rare that those kind of things you just buy, you see a couple pictures, you see that the parts are there, the piping is there, the things that you really need are all there. And you just say, yes, I can fix the speaker problem. Just like you say, when you repair something, I can fix that. I have enough speakers to, if the speakers are wrong, I can make them right. We have the wire for the wiring harnesses. We have the jacks. We have, a lot of the things that we can spruce them up with. So that's how I've got a lot of these things, was just by knowing the store owners and having bought so many pieces. Brian, what's that place? They're friends of yours in the Midwest somewhere. We got that amazing stack. I can't remember the name of the store.
Billy O's Dynamite Music.
Billy O's Dynamite Music.
What a name. I like it.
Yeah. And just, and they call and they go, "Hey, we just got this thing." And I send pictures and I just give them a credit card number because it's something I don't have, or it's something that I haven't seen in 40 years. And I know that the minute they put it out on the floor, it'll be gone.
Wow.
So.
Yeah. Well, it's good. It's what they say. It's all in who you know.
Yeah. But it wasn't always that way. It was from years and years and years of doing business with these people and buying enough stuff and, having your credit card go through every time. So
Right.
I just found this in the book. The guy was asking about the yellow.
Ooh,
so this is one of those shots that
Yellow stack.
We took outside.
Oh, that's gorgeous.
Yeah. So I think that's a 74. Without, what does this say? 74 and 73.
Wow.
So yeah, there's a lot of fun stuff.
There's a pretty good question from Tracy Guns. Can you explain why Marshall cabinets have different speaker covering, meaning grill cloth, and what the thickness does to the sound?
I literally was just going to pull that one up.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was just like running through the things.
Well, the Brian could probably say the pinstripe being the first one definitely compresses it because the vulcanized rubber. But Brian, take this question.
Well, the pinstripe grill with the vulcanized rubber, you can't really tell from the front side, but when you see that type of grill cloth that was made in 65, 6, and 7 on cabinets and combos, when you look at it from the back side, you'll realize that literally the vulcanized rubber covers in stripes about 50% of the actual material. So only 50% of the material allows sound to escape beyond it. and that's one of the keys to the compressed Jimi Hendrix early recordings and so forth. And then they changed and went from that to a basket weave material, which let
Which
a
is
little
thick.
audio pass through it, but it was still pretty thick. And then they went from that to a large, which let more audio pass through it, and then a small check in the mid to late 70s, which let even more audio pass through it, and then the black grills let even more audio pass through it. And so each one has a different type of compression or holding back, if you will, of the air that the speaker is moving behind it.
Yeah, well, that's pretty accurate.
So, Tracy, hopefully that answers your question.
Or then if you were Eddie Van Halen, you just cut the grill right off.
Yeah, and take all the toe licks off.
Yeah.
Which sounds different.
But I never understood that, because you're exposing the finger joints and the glue, which is already dry and brittle. Those things start to separate, and then you have, basically four sides. You've got lumber. So I didn't get taking the covers off.
I don't know if that's necessarily true. I have a bare wood cabinet in my shop here, and it's been around. It was Stephen Stills before mine, and it's been mine for the last 20 years. And there's no separation in the finger joints at all. They're glued solid.
It depends on what you're objected to over time.
Yeah.
Don't you have 3 of them in that room?
I do. I have new cabinets that don't have any Tolex on them.
Oh, okay.
But I like cabs without Tolex because they breathe in a certain way. I like that.
Well, to each his own. What is it?
Yeah.
One man's trash is another man's.
Not pretty, but it's
Serious Amps. Everyone keep him well. I'm glad I'm no longer in the hospital. I'm sorry to hear that. I didn't know you were in the hospital.
Get better.
Yeah.
I think I was starting to read some of that in this thread. I didn't know either, Alex.
Yeah, it sounds like he said, I'll find out more information on Wednesday when I'm getting the ultrasound on a few growths on my adrenal glands.
Fun stuff.
Yeah, I know. I can feel your. I understand. I'm empathetic to your situation because I'm also going through that. I'm getting a CT scan on my kidney at the end of the month. So to follow something.
Didn't you already have that?
Well, yeah, I'm following up on that.
Oh, another one.
Yeah, like literally every 3 months.
Oh, yeah, to see if anything changed.
If it changes, yeah. So hopefully it won't change.
I'm having my 5th hand surgery next week.
Really? Oh my God. For what?
I've had carpal tunnel on both hands, and I've had 3 trigger fingers, and I'm about to have the 4th. Arthritis just, was on my mom's side, and it's sort of in my gene pool. So I've had both knees replaced and shoulder replacements and 2 back surgeries and 5
Jesus. You're the bionic man.
23 operations. Yeah.
23?
Fuck.
23.
Holy shit, dude.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
But pieced together, I mean, for a long time I was walking with a limp, and it was just excruciating, and I'm now out of pain.
Yeah,
So
I've never had one operation.
I don't recommend it.
Yeah.
None of them were volunteer. I don't understand those. These were all, necessary.
Yeah. Well,
shit.
Glad you're okay. And Alex, we're sending prayers for you, man. Hopefully you feel good. Let's see. Baltic birch is still nice stuff, right?
Well, it's the only thing to use.
and it's still available, Brian. There's a store, right?
Well, yes, it's Baltic birch, like what they used to use in the 60s and 70s, is available. It can be purchased from rare lumber yards here in America, and there are some here in California, which I've purchased it from. You got to know what it goes by metric size, and Baltic birch, because of its where it comes from, it either comes in 5 foot by 5 foot sheets, or 5-foot by 10-foot sheets.
Mm-hmm.
Got to know which thicknesses to get, and so forth. But yeah, it's super expensive, and it can be had. And I do carry all the different sizes for doing repairs, because I get guys that, somebody tips over a speaker cabinet with the jack still plugged in and cracks some wood or breaks off a corner or something,
And
or lighting
we
truss fell in the guy's cabinet and smashed it to hell, and he needs repair.
we talk about it in the book as well. There's a thing on Baltic birch about all the different sizes and kinds. So it's what page is it? Somewhere towards the end.
The end of the part section.
Yeah, in the part section of the book.
Are there? This is a great question from Richard Nagamitsu. Any interesting prototypes or oddballs that were never made public?
I own a couple.
Oh yeah, what do you got?
I have had a couple that I sold over the years for different things, but yeah, there's Marshall has been known to experiment and make things, and that were maybe something that they introduced at a NAMM show that didn't take off, and they only made 2 or 3 of, or just one of, or something, or when they decided to make it available to the public, it was changed slightly, and yeah, so there are things like that do exist, and they're oddballs.
Brian,
sure.
what about like the mail order stuff that was never sold in stores?
Marshall made a lot of combo amplifiers from the late 60s through the mid 70s. They had 2 or 3 different things that were available around the UK or in the European Union, to be mail order amplifiers that were never sold in stores at all. Most common of those and most familiar to people would be like the Marshall Mercury amplifier combo, the Marshall Capri combos, the Populars they were all mail order amplifiers of various sizes and types. Some of them they made dozens of, some of them they made hundreds of. It just depended on the type and the era.
Okay. Are there any amps in the book that were repaired by Dave?
No, probably not, or maybe, I don't know.
Well, when you looked at it, you said, I think there's a Lee Jackson repair, I think, to something.
Mod. Yeah.
I personally have not taken anything to you yet, but that's about to change, because I think I've got a few here that haven't been turned on for a while that are probably going to need some resuscitation. For a very long time, I was using Roy Blankenship, who's another repair guy in Los Angeles, and known to David Friedman and a lot of the other local guys. He's a real sweetheart of a guy.
Yeah, he's a sweetheart. Yeah,
he makes great amps too.
Yeah, Blankenship amps are great, and I love Roy. He has odd hours sometimes, so he likes to work it through the night. And that's not necessarily for everybody. I've driven to his shop many times at midnight to drop things off or pick things up. But I think in the very near future, David Friedman, if he's so willing, is going to get his hands into.
Of course. Yeah.
So
I love old Marshalls.
Have you or will you use Brad's Guitar Garage boards to rebuild, repair any Marshall amps?
Brad's guitars boards are for DSLs, so probably not.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Okay.
I'd never even heard of that.
Brad is a fantastic tech in Australia, and he's designed a DSL replacement board because Marshall doesn't offer them anymore.
Okay.
And for all the boards that had bias drift and things like that, and he's done a really high quality PCB, which never existed in that amp, and he's selling replacement boards now.
Okay.
Let's see. Scott Brockaway, I just want to say sending best wishes to your mom. He said he's not involved in the community at the moment, health issues, and his mom. So just wanted to say that. Hopefully everything's well with you. Let's see. So the book's coming out May 21st, you said?
I am told we're going to take delivery May 20th. I currently I work on a show called The Voice, and our finale is May 20th. So Brian has agreed to come down and be here to actually receive the books, and we will start. Kaylee is actually coming to join us from Colorado. So me and Brian and Kaylee and probably Denny are going to actually do the shipping ourselves. Everything that we've done has been a really grassroots, thing where it's been, like I say, the six of us have done pretty much everything, including getting all these books in boxes and, driving them to the post office and making sure they're safe and labeled and in the proper box and paid for and all that. So yeah, that's the day we're starting.
Awesome. Well, everybody who ordered, who's
looks like people
watching,
are excited for it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Jason from Head First Amps is like looking forward to the book big time. Jason, it's awesome. I assume you ordered one.
Well, David Friedman, I have to thank you for being this kind about it. We worked really, really hard on it to make it look great, to have it be accurate. I can't tell you how many times I would write something and send it to Brian, and he would write back, something like false, fix this, do this. That screw was not right. They didn't do this. And it's like, oh, shit. So, I would have to take it back and redo it. And, he was the final arbiter and everything because, that's what's great about our relationship is we bring different things to it. And so, Brian's a lot more technical than I am. He's a lot more knowledgeable than I am about a lot of this. I came to it as a guitar player. He came to it as a tech. So, but together between our two brains, it worked. And so, but he was like, no, this isn't right. No, you got to fix this. No, we can't say this. No, we have to say it this way. And there was a lot of back and forth, late nights of, me just going, God, I wish I could get this right. And then eventually a couple of times I said, you know what, buddy, you got to write this one. Cause I've done it 3 times and it hasn't met your standards. So please just take this one and write it. Brian, that's accurate, right?
Pretty much. Yeah. You wrote, the lion's share of the story stuff that went with all the things from your collection. I wrote up all the things from mine, and I wrote up all the info and data and anything that we borrowed from Dave Amato. But it requires a lot of things. Sometimes when you read it back to yourself, you realize, I need to say this in a different way so that the regular guy will understand what I'm talking about.
And Brian's memory, I would call him, and it was a piece that I owned and a piece that I bought, and and I have the memory of it. And I said to him, you were there. Remind me of what happened in the store because I just can't piece this thing together. And I had the receipt in front of me, and he would say, don't you remember we went on a Tuesday and it was 1:00 and it was 70 degrees outside and we parked in front of the store, and and he'll have this insane memory every single, like almost savant like, and it's like, God, and so really, I would have the broad strokes and he would have like a lot of the details that I would miss. And so it really was a perfect marriage.
That's great.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, it's a book of love, man. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Yep. Can't wait to get it. Roger Dat, happy Aloha and Good Friday, gents. Dave, any ETA updates in the Jose's?
June. I think June. We're still waiting. I'm you have to get okay, think about this just for a second. Hypothetically, if everyone buys one on the list, that's 1,000 amplifiers.
It's a lot.
That means you need 1,000 transformers. That's a lot. 1,000 chassis. That's a lot. Generally transformers are ordered in batches of like 100
4,000
or 200. Tubes, everything. Yeah. So it takes a while to get it all. Okay, technically there's 900. Wait, Mario just told me who is managing the list, and he just texted it to me, I think. All right, there's 960s on the list. That's close enough, right? Let's make it 1,000 people. Come on. If you're not on the list, go to there. Let's make it 1,000. Come on.
Dave,
40 more. Come on, no problem.
Tell Mario to put me down. 961.
Just go to our website and go, because no one's going to go there and type your name in for you.
All right. Or I'll just better than that. I'll just send you a text, and just whenever.
Well, we might have a separate deal going here.
Okay. Oh, that's right.
Right. On tab.
Then you might not have to worry about that.
All right.
But yeah, go on that list. So I mean, you got all that stuff to order. So, and once you get it, and then you have to put it into production. So circuit boards have to be stuffed, and the amps have to be made, and it's going to take a minute.
It's similar to a book. You take the photographs, and once you have photographs, it still is not a book. And once you have photographs and the stories to go with them, it's still not a book. You still need the graphic arts and stuff to go with it. It's a whole lot of fluctuating and flowing components that come together.
Yeah.
Actually, product.
I did this a couple times before Brian and I ventured out on this book, so I kind of knew what was coming. This was Brian's first attempt at this, and I kept saying to him, just wait. We're, yes, we've taken all the pictures, but we're not even 20% there yet, because then we have to go through the thousands of pictures that we have taken. Mm-hmm. And then weed out all the ones that we don't want. So, we would take 25, 30 pictures of every cabinet and every head from multiple angles, and bottom and top and side and front and back, all that. We didn't use all of them, but it just, the weeding out.
Oh God, just the editing of everything down to what you're going to actually use, pick all the writing, making sure that's all right. Copy, you check that everything is actually spelled right and the punctuation is right and everything. And you have to check that 100 times.
We actually,
because you'll miss something.
The photoshopping, just getting everything level, because the photographers used sometimes a tripod, sometimes a monopod, sometimes handheld to get in and to get the cone numbers off of the speakers. You have to go in handheld, and they're not always. The symmetry is not always perfect, and so every one of those has to be altered. Sometimes you have to change the light levels. Sometimes even things are a little blurry that you have to, there's programs to, fix the focus. Right. And so the pictures were really went through to make them great. And yeah,
can't even imagine
the punctuation. So Brian and Denny and I went, because of this whole NAMM thing, and we had to get these prototypes done. We literally were told, like, right before Christmas Eve, that we were going to be involved in NAMM. We had not edited the book yet. So we worked from Christmas Eve through New Year's Eve. And literally, everybody wanted us with families and things like that. And we were like, we got to get the book done. So we worked around the clock for 12 hours a day. And Brian would be on one chapter, I'd be on another. He'd send something to me, I'd send it to Denny. Denny and I would work together. It was we were in 3 different locations, and we were on Zoom calls and FaceTimes. And then, he would go do something and I would be on with Denny. And we finished New Year's Eve at like 11 o'clock. And then, we had to, we got the prototypes. I think we printed one, and then we went through it quickly, and it's like, oh shit, how did we miss all this? And we had pages and pages and pages of notes. Then when we printed the 6, that had been the second pass. And then we met a guy at the NAMM show who was connected to one of the artists in the Marshall booth. And he sat with one of the books, and he went through it, and he said, you guys realize that you misspelled this, and the date of Kennedy's assassination was wrong, and this was wrong, and this was wrong. He started making notes, and then we had to go through it again. So it has had 3 or 4 passes, Brian, of editing.
I'd say 4 by now.
And then one of the things that Denny and I couldn't believe was, so we talk about in every chapter what was going on in the world, and just in general, to bring people back to what 1974 sort of looked like, and 1972 looked like, and then what was going on in music at that time, and films, and then what was going on in Marshall at that time. And so we talked a lot about what records were on the charts, and then we didn't realize that the record. The title of the record gets italics, but the song doesn't. It gets quotes, but then, and so we realized that we had a mixed bag. Sometimes we italicized, sometimes we quoted, sometimes we didn't do anything. So we had to go back through every single chapter and make them all the same, so that the songs were one thing, the titles were one thing, movies were something else. And so we did all that, looking things up on the internet. How do you treat a song title? And so it was really, really time consuming to get everything correct. And we just realized, look, we're going to open this thing up and we're going to go, oh my God, how did we miss this? And we'll fix it on the second pass.
Yeah.
Shit happens,
Yeah.
No, I mean, like whenever you're editing text or anything like that, or anything, you have to have multiple people look it over, because you can look at it till you're blue in the face. I got them all. I got it all. And no, you didn't.
So,
and then you have another person look and they find something, and another person looks and they find something, and you're like, fuck.
You're like, how did I miss that? I know.
The book was going to be printed, and the printer said, you got to come over here and sign off on these last minute changes. So I went to the printers. He brought all the changes out. I read everything. I signed off on it, and I was looking at one of the pages, and I called Brian up and I go, you are not going to believe what this paragraph says. And I read it to him, and it's like, how did all of us miss this? And I don't remember what it was, Brian. Remember, I read it to you, and it was literally at the printers when they were about to put ink on the forms that we had to go back into the PDFs, fix some misspelling or some bad punctuation or some run-on sentence, and then rebuild the form. And it was on the day that they started printing that we made a fix. So yeah, you look at it over and over and over again and keep reading it, and you just don't see it.
Mm-hmm.
When will there be a Friedman book?
It's a good question.
You're assuming I own any of the early things. I don't.
Well, yeah, you do own a Jose, and you've worked on plenty of stuff.
I'd have to go back. I have to go back and buy,
But do you have pictures of everything?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, I'm just terrible.
That's the key. Is one of the things that we realized early on, and I can speak from a lot of experience, is who owns the photos. And it's critical. And one of the things that Brian and I talked about with our photographers, and we must own the photos, because photo licensing can be very expensive, and the photograph belongs to the person that took the picture, even though taking a picture of your amplifier, that is not your photo.
Yeah,
it's his photo. So you got to be very clear on, a clear chain of title and all that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. LCW, Dave, met your buddy Marty from Motor City Guitars. He showed me a pic of you from his wedding. I think you were quite a strapping young lad with long Samson-like flowing locks.
Way back.
Weren't we all?
Way back.
Yeah. So, Peter, you mentioned that you work on The Voice. What do you do for The Voice?
I'm the associate director. So I sit in a TV truck next to the director and the production supervisor and the technical director. And there are 4 of us in the front row. The executive producer sits behind us. And so the associate director is the one who readies all the camera shots and basically calls the show, tells everybody where we are at all times, what's coming up. And I work in the live shows I have a person on my headset who's at the network where they're rolling in the commercials. So I'm counting them to a commercial. They're counting me out a commercial. I am cueing the music director. I'm cueing the playback operator. I'm cueing, it's all the mechanical stuff. Whereas the director is doing all the creative, picking the camera shots that he wants and the framing and all of that. So it's sort of a ballet between the technical director that actually pushes the buttons and the director that is lining everything up, and me, who's one step ahead of the director, warning everybody what's coming.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's,
you don't realize how many layers are behind the scenes, right? You just,
yeah, that show is a lot because there's multiple trucks. There's a production audio truck that is mixing all the music separate from the guy that's mixing, like the host and the coaches, and then there's front of house mixing who is mixing, what the audience is hearing. There's monitor mixers who's mixing what the performers are hearing. And then we have another truck that's feeding everything in the screens. And then it's a lot. It's a really big production.
yeah,
And
it sounds like
it's wild. I love it. It's really fun.
That's cool. Sounds great. Cajun Boy 2K. Finally, I found your live stream. Well, thank you. I'm glad you did. Yep. And people.
Oh, and someone asked, where do I sign up for the Jose Amp? Go to our webpage. Don't scroll anywhere. Just wait for a second. The second moving banner will have the link. The first banner that comes up is the newer software for IRX and IR pedals, and then the second banner that pops up is the Jose link. Go there, click on it.
That's the link.
Well, that's the link to the webpage.
Right.
Yeah. Just wait for the banner. Some people are like, I can't find it anywhere on the website. Hang on a second. Just stay on the first page. It'll slide over and be right in front of your face.
Yep.
It used to be the first, but then we came up with something else we had to put up there. So actually, I could probably move that around.
So let's see. Let's see. Probably can't comment, but how many Dirty Shirleys and BEs are there, or which artist amp was most popular?
I mean, I actually don't know how many BEs we've made. I'd have to do we'd have to do a search, on that one SKU. A lot. Like just a B100, at least a few hundred a year.
And
So there's, and the B100 has been around for 10. Well, the B100 in our current, longer than that, but with our current manufacturer has been in production 10 years. Before that, it was just us, which probably wasn't that great of numbers.
When did you start?
2009 started the first era of it. So, yeah, lots. And then I'd have to pull the numbers on each amp. As far as the most popular artist amp, well, I'm gonna probably say
Jerry, right?
Well, it's either Jerry Cantrell or Jakey Lee. So, I mean, Jakey Lee has multiple products, so I think that's probably overall the most sold, maybe. Jerry sold a lot though over time.
When's the Phil X head coming out?
It's a while down the road still.
Yeah.
We have all sorts of interesting new roadblocks with tariffs and things.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. And are you still working on the Vox?
Yep.
That down the road too.
Yeah. Actively working on a whole bunch of stuff right now. So.
Okay.
What is the Vox modeled after?
Top boost copper top AC30.
Oh, I have one of those.
It has 2 channels. I have one too.
They're great.
Just has 2 channels. There's no trem. We're not doing a trem, you know.
I have a Vox that belonged to the Shadows. It's got the Shadows logo on the bottom corner.
Oh, cool.
Have you seen those? There weren't many of them.
Mm-mm.
Yeah,
I haven't seen that.
yeah, it's cool.
Technically, mine is a kind of an odd one. It's blue. So, and it's really old, the Tolex. And the person I got it from, his estimation was it could have possibly be a trade show amp at one point in time. Maybe that's not true. Who knows?
Yeah,
But it's extremely old Tolex. That wasn't done in any recent times. It was definitely done in the 60s. And then it had top boost added to it. It's a copper top. It had top boost added to it by Mark Sampson in the very early 90s.
right.
Oh, wow.
Who unfortunately just passed away.
I was going to say he recently passed.
Yeah.
Just as he was getting started again with Bad Cat,
Mm-hmm.
which is a shame. David Tickle, and I agree with you. I think that EVH should have done this already. To hop on the 4-hole Marshall style non-master volume. I feel like they should have done that already.
I've had long discussions about this with them.
With who?
Them, the family.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. They should have done it already.
Yeah, absolutely. Seriously.
But there's all sorts of like logistics doing it with, because they have a deal with Fender, and there's all this sort of I agree.
Stuff.
Let's just go there. I agree.
Yeah. Any news on the Naked in the next few years?
There might be an interesting thing that's going to happen with that. I don't know. We might be doing an amp together with Billy Howardo, who I originally made the amp with. And we'll see what comes out of that. I have an idea, and it might be rack mounted.
Wow. Okay. Cool. All right. Let's see. I think we've gotten to all the questions.
Yeah, I think we're good.
Yeah. And so guys, make sure that you check out collectingloudhistory.com. That's where you're going to order the book. They are shipping after May 20th, 21st.
Correct.
And so make sure and so is there a limit in terms of like once you hit how many you've already printed, you're going to stop taking orders, or?
Well, we printed 1,500. So we haven't figured it out yet. It really depends on once they get out and how fast they go. We know based on, how long the printing and the binding takes. If they start, flying off rapidly after they get out and, stores start ordering them from us. I know Chicago Music Exchange, they bought 10, and he said they're going to be able to sell a lot of them. We may be ordering a second round faster than we thought.
Yeah.
I don't really know. It really depends on, what the groundswell is like. The pre-orders have been amazing, like I said before. And that's really helped us, launch this. It was such a massively expensive undertaking that, Brian and I just couldn't, between what we spent, paying everybody in the book design and Kaylee and the photographers and all that, and the book to get printed, and the prototypes and it was, we're well over 150 grand.
Wow.
And it's a lot of money to come out of pocket for, without any help. So the very kind and gracious people who pre-ordered this have helped us, get some of it paid for. Some of it, is Brian and I have already paid for out of our pockets. And, if we can get the money back one day, great. And if we can get the money back with enough to do round 2, then we absolutely will. It really depends on what the demand is like. But I honestly think that it's such a quality piece, and the photographs are great, and the subject matter is amazing, and so I think it's going to do well.
I believe it'll be used as a reference manual.
Yeah, big time.
I'm sure it will. Yeah, I'm sure. Well, awesome.
We got
guys.
one more super chat that came in.
Oh, we do?
Mhm.
Oh, there we do. Okay. Rob's Tone Zone. Pete Bryan, what's the strangest Marshall story in the book? Can't wait for it. Dave, how do we know or where we are in line for the Jose? You don't.
Well, I'll explain that in a minute. You want to?
I can definitely answer the strangest Marshall story in the book.
Okay.
So I called Brian when my wife and I bought this house that we currently are in. We had a real estate agent who we remained friends with, and she called me one day and she said, one of there's a guy who passed away in one of the houses I'm selling, and I think there's a Marshall amp here, but his daughter wants to get rid of everything, so she put it out on the curb. And I said, holy shit, Cindy, go get this immediately. How far are you from it? And she said, I'm like 5 minutes away. So she goes over there and she picks it up off of the curb. It's a 1971 white 100-watt head that the daughter had literally left on the parkway between the sidewalk and the street. And so Cindy put it in her trunk, and I raced over to her house and took this thing out. And the guy was a smoker. And so he had it in his house and he smoked. So it was covered in 30 years of, cigarette smoke, and it had really yellowed. And for whatever reason, he put 6550 tubes in it. And the cat had chewed through the power cord. So there was the wires were all frayed, but it was what it was, and it was a real 7100 watt, and the daughter didn't know what it was, and so Brian and I took it apart. He took the box home to try to clean 30 years of cigarette smoke off, and discovered that the logo, which is normally white plastic or gold, was actually silver, and we had never ever seen a silver logo like this. And the box was the real deal, and the chassis was the real deal. And I took it to Roy, and he took the 6550s out, and he biased it for EL34s, and he changed the power cord and started it up, and it was just glorious. And so then I got the box back from Brian. We put everything back together, and the daughter said, "What's it worth?" And I said, "Well, it depends on whether the transformers are real, but give me some time with it." And so I wrote her back and I said, "Look, this is what it is. It's original white. It's a 71. It's worth a ton of dough. And, here's a couple people who are selling things that are similar. And so, just tell me what you want for it." And she said, "Look, my dad really would want you to have this. He won't want somebody." And she said, "I don't know. How's $1,000? And I went, "Really?" And she said, "Yeah." And I said, "Because it's worth more than $1,000. And she said, "That's okay. That's all I want."
Wow.
So yeah, one left out by the street to
Amazing. That's a great story. Yeah.
Yeah, to anybody who, thankfully the real estate agent got over there before somebody else did.
Yeah.
So I guess that was probably the weirdest one.
And how long ago was that?
3-4 years ago. There was one other. A guy had a combo I really wanted, and he was playing in a club band on Balboa Island. And he said the band finishes at 2 a.m. We play from 10 to 2, and I'll meet you at 2 a.m. on Balboa Island behind the bar. So I had just had hand surgery like the day before, and I had my hand in a cast. And my wife's like, "Where are you going?" And I went, "I'm going to drive to Balboa Island to meet this guy and behind a club at 2 a.m. to pick up a combo."
That sounds
And
safe.
she's like, "Really?" And I went, "Yeah." So, one-handed driving with, my hand in a cast. Bless you.
Thank
And
you.
down at Balboa Island. And sure enough, there was a guy at the back of the club at 2 a.m. with a combo
Thanks.
into the car.
Oh, fuck.
Gotta love it.
All right, and to answer the Jose list thing, everyone's on the list. What'll happen is when amps are supposed to go live in the web store, which I think will be a private link, you will be notified. It won't be a public announcement, only be an announcement for the list. So then it's it's like buying tickets. Good luck. So, but we'll keep doing that. We'll keep making the announcements till everyone has them.
There you
So
go. And they'll keep making the amps for everyone who's on the list.
yeah. So you'll get one eventually. Maybe you'll get one the first day.
Right.
Depends on how fast you are.
Are you still making the Plex amps?
Yeah. Absolutely.
I bought one. I love it. It's,
That's a great amp.
Cool.
it's absolutely fantastic. I highly recommend it if you're a Marshall lover. It's really great.
Right there. I love it.
What does that question say?
It says, on behalf of thousands, I want to thank Peter for his efforts for trying to do the right thing and get the truth out. Look forward to receiving my copy of the book. I have no doubt this book will be as great as prior efforts.
Let me say something about this dude.
Okay.
He is really, really smart, this guy. And he really knows what he's doing. And he approached me to talk about a subject that I do not like to talk about. And he was really sensitive to the subject matter and asked me the questions in such a way that I thought, here's a guy that really thinks for himself and has looked at everything and decided what he felt was the truth and what was accurate. And he was really appreciative of what I tried to do. And he came at me the right way, and he didn't believe in all the, telephone game crap that goes around. And I really, really appreciate him. We've developed a nice sort of, pen pal email back and forth thing. And he's a really good dude, and his heart's in the right place. And I appreciate him.
And he has 3 prior super chats here
That we will answer.
That we will answer you, Dave, but privately, because we weren't just talking about that subject, and I think you might have heard that already.
Yeah. So, Dave, Peter will be in touch with you. We'll figure that out.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, I really appreciate Peter, Brian. Thank you guys for coming on the show. It's been fantastic discussion. Really appreciate your time and the opportunity to get to know you. And everybody, please check out their book, Collecting Loud History.
And,
It's awesome.
From both Brian and I, we couldn't be any more thankful and grateful to you guys for having us on and hosting this incredible podcast, and David Friedman for the amazing work that you do and all of your amps and everything that you're going to be doing. I'm super grateful to have met you, and Mark, grateful to have met you, and just thank you guys so much for hosting us.
Thank
Awesome.
No problem.
Yeah. All right.
What'd you say, Brian? I'm sorry, I missed you. Missed what you said.
I said thank you very much, gentlemen, and Dave. I will be seeing you soon when I'm down in LA.
Oh yeah, we got that. We got a cabinet to restore.
We got some work to be done. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Awesome.
Our next live stream, I think, will be next Friday night. We'll do an Ask Dave show. Punish Dave with questions again. so we'll do that. And
I get punished every single day in my emails.
Yeah. Constant Friedman questions.
Glutton for punishment. That should be the new thing I should put.
Glutton for punishment. There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. All right. Well, everybody have a great weekend. Peter and Brian, just hang on while we hang up here.
Happy
Okay.
Easter.
Take care,
Thank
guys.
you.
Have a
Take
great
care.
weekend.